Oh, the swears, guys. Oh, the swears. Today's 16-bit superheroes game is Spawn, which came out in 1995 on the Super Nintendo. I think there was a Sega Genesis version of this cartridge as well. I played the Super Nintendo version, developed by Yuki Yotai, I think I'm saying that correctly, and it was published by Sony on Nintendo, which is kind of crazy. I love the look of this game. I have to get that out of the way. I think the visuals for Spawn are really terrific, especially because this was coming sort of late in the day for 16-bit side-scrolling titles, and the onslaught of the PlayStation and all kinds of other stuff was coming, so people were kind of at the top of their game, at least with the visuals and the animations, and there are some really, really cool character designs, some great enemies that you're going to fight in here. There's definitely repetition. This is another one of those incredibly challenging games based on mechanics, and one of the shocking things that I found with Spawn is that even though there's some special moves and some cool powers that you can pull off using combinations on the button and the controller, which are difficult to pull off, by the way, it's not like you can take them and keep dishing all that stuff out, and they also deplete your energy. But all of the core mechanics, the punching, the kicking, the jumping, the hovering, the floating from ledge to ledge, because even though this is mostly a beat-em-up where you're scrolling on sort of horizontal planes, there is also some verticality in the game, some platform jumping, but all of those core mechanics are really stunted, and so pixel precise that the frustration level is incredibly high. I kept getting cheap hit after cheap hit, or trying to bounce off of a wall and navigate my rather large sprite of Spawn, which is in the plus column, but I was trying to get my large Spawn character to land perfectly within these little ledges and stuff, and I kept doing it over and over and over. It was driving me insane, and I was like standing up and screaming at the TV, which brought me back to the day of 16-bit gaming, because there was a lot of that back then. I think over time, the games industry started to say, well, let's maybe make this a little more inviting and a little bit easier, let more people into this thing, so that they're not screaming at their televisions and ready to hurl their controllers out the window. I do appreciate all of the artistry that's in here. This is a rather dark tale for a 16-bit superhero game. It involves Spawn chasing after these 13 missing kids that have been scooped up, and they've been, trapped, and you've got these evil demonic forces and pretty cool creatures that you gotta beat up along the way. The cut sequences are all sort of comic book style and definitely in the flavor of the darker tone of the Spawn comics, although it doesn't get as dark as the Spawn books. It's still kind of cartoony. There's a lot to really appreciate with this game. I love the music as well. I thought it was really cool, and some of the background environmental stuff was pretty sweet. One level you're in Egypt, and one level you're in an old Gothic church, and then you're in the pits of hell, and you're battling demons. You're on top of New York buildings. So there's a lot to kind of hang your love for Spawn on in this title, for sure. I just wish that the mobility and the core sort of fundamental stuff, the punching and the kicking, just gave you a lot more freedom. I'll give you a perfect example. You have a chain attack that you don't have to use any of your sort of energy to use, but you have to press down, and then I think it's the Y button, and it's just sort of like from a crouch position, and it shoots up the little chain, and it's like, well, you got the chain, why can't I stand up and, Ghost Rider style, just hack and slash with this chain and do some lethal carnage and damage? You can't really do that. And the other thing, too, is that the ledge jumping, the platform hopping stuff that you have to do in this thing is just infiltrated with so many cheap projectile attacks. You'll be leaping for a ledge, and then out of nowhere, poof, a little fireball will knock you and turn you into the Human Torch for a second. Did you ever notice how many of the old beat-em-ups back in the day, when you got hit by any kind of fire thing, they all had the same animation? It's like they borrowed something from somebody, either Capcom or SNK, but everybody's on fire and falling. And that happens to Spawn a lot, and thusly, I would stand up and yell at my TV. I'm doing all of these 16-bit superhero segments based on my appreciation for superhero games through the ages. Most recently, the Spider-Man game that came out for the PlayStation 4 in 2018. I freaking loved that, and I said, well, I'm going to start collecting all of these old cartridges, these old superhero cartridges that I never got to. And so I'm reviewing these games as if I'm playing them for the first time, and some of them I definitely am playing them for the first time, like this Spawn title. I never played it back in the day. Like I say, there's a lot to dig. There's a lot to put a smile on your face with this game, but there is also a tremendous amount of frustration. So I'm going to give Spawn for the Super Nintendo a 6.5 out of 10.